I'm singing that, but you might be.
There is a chance that that got onto the stream. Welcome, everyone, to Cryptic Puzzle. We've been gone for, like, 2 months. I think actually literally 2 months, because I went on a bunch of trips, and then also life got way busier than I anticipated to, trips aside, and Andy played a bunch of Final Fantasy VII, but this other game came out called Clair Obscur. Hi, I'm Tommy.
My name's Andy, and this is Cryptic Puzzle. It's the show
Yeah.
where we do the deep dives in games and we talk about video game mechanics and why we love games and why they're interesting and really get into the meat of it, the thick of it.
The thick of it.
Yes, what
I ho
you
I
said.
hope that sounded awesome in your headphones, because it's gonna sound even better to everyone else.
Today we're talking about the smash surprise hit that no one expected, called Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Great game, not an amazing title. Uh,
You know, that's the I think that's the I remember seeing, maybe not the very first trailer that announced this, but the one that played, like, about a year ago now, I think at this point, maybe not even a year ago, um, and being like, "Oh, that game actually looks pretty cool," once, like, the next trailer had come out, closer to release. And I'm like, "I wonder what that'll be like," but yeah, that was one of my first reactions. I was like, "That's a mouthful of a name." I'm not sure how I feel about that,
yeah, they're
but
clearly very inspired by the B team at Square that names games like Octopath Traveler and Triangle Strategy. They were like, "Oh, we gotta follow in their footsteps and come up with a terrible name."
well, we can talk more about the name later, because despite the fact that I had the, same initial reaction that you did, it's actually quite fitting, and, it's starting with, a despite the fact that you would think that clair obscur is French, the French term is actually something entirely different to still say the same thing, but it ultimately just means light, dark, um, but it's a somewhat common French-based phrase for basically talking about, things having 2 natures type of thing, you know, the
And
duality
boy,
is
is this
something.
game French.
Oh, yeah, boy, is this game French. This is the Frenchest piece of media I think I have ever experienced in my
Yeah.
whole dang life.
Yeah.
So
This game was cool. So you said you had heard about it. I feel like I saw trailers for it similarly like last year and remember being like, I don't know what that is, but it looks amazing. And the trailer was I think just like basic gameplay really. But sort of out of nowhere it feels like this game came out a couple months ago, just like dropped onto the scene and suddenly was like the game that everybody was talking about and for good reason. But like what was your like experience hearing about this game and sort of the lead up to it getting released?
Pretty much, like, the first time that, like, any reviews had started to come out, I don't remember exactly when the embargo date was, and whether or not it was, like, actually before release, and whether or not there was buzz for that, but basically it came out and a lot of people started going, "Hey, if you like Final Fantasy or turn-based RPGs or honestly just good games in general, you really gotta check this one out." There was a lot of immediate buzz from a whole bunch of people, I think a lot of word of mouth type of thing, because ultimately, like, we're saying this is, like, the new hotness, but ultimately, it's still selling in the, like, sub 5,000,000, which for, studio's first game, which is a lot of actual, like, ex-Ubisoft employees, believe it or not, making the least Ubisoft game that's ever been made.
Now, I give me the context. Like, see, I don't know as much about sales numbers. How does like 5 million compare to like God of War or something like that?
Uh the big numbers that a lot of those, studios are looking for, like, despite the fact that the joke is that Horizon always releases next to, like, the other biggest game to ever come out, those games sell, like, over 20,000,000 copies, like, the big, big,
Okay.
big, big, big ones, so, like, and those are crazy numbers. Those are, like, gonna get you top 100 all time for a while still, you know?
So 5 million is pretty good for a first time studio. Like and there's
Absolutely.
controversy there's controversy on how small the studio is, which we can maybe get into, but we'll say just for the sake of simplicity, like a small studio with their first outing of this size.
Yeah, and there's a lot of experience, under the belt of the guys at, Sandfall Interactive is the name of the studio, I believe. Um, and this is just their first outing together, all doing this in this place to make this game type of thing. But they've been making games in other capacities, for, I'm sure I don't know what the range of experience is there. But yeah, I guess when it comes to that development studio, part of the 33 thing comes down to, well, Sandfall itself is just 33 people, but their full on disclosure, like there's a battle happening on screen right now. The battle animations were all done by a completely separate, like, contracted studio type of thing, you
Yeah.
know? So just like with every other game, there's almost always some other piece of, yes, no, this studio didn't directly do this. A whole bunch of other people worked on this in some capacity with Sandfall to make it happen. So that's what happens.
Yeah.
That's the main thing that they're like, no, 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 this was absolutely not made by 33 people. It wasn't made by an enormous team, you know, like there's like we're talking about huge games, like for I don't know if it's The Last of Us or whatever, whichever one of Naughty Dog's big um blockbuster games at this point. They'll contract out like 40 other studios and then however many employees work at each one of those studios on the project, you know. So like that's when the scales get into like the crazy hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people type of thing. But that's just, that's not the case here. It's a much, much, much teenier, tinier slice of what that is type of deal. So,
Right.
anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, they're very
Um.
good and they deserve a lot of praise because this game I put game of the dot 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 question mark in the title because it's really on the like I I I would be astonished if another game came out this year that I liked more than this game. I don't think it's possible. I would love for that to be true because that somehow means that I get another like unbelievable game to come out this year, but, like, I I just don't think it's happening. I'm not a betting
Yeah.
man, but I wouldn't bet on
It's
that.
it's it's definitely an all-timer, for me, and, like, just in terms of its legacy, like, it is interesting because, like, playing this game directly after playing Final Fantasy VII and then some of Final Fantasy VII Remake, immediately, like, my thought was, like, and I said this to you, and at first you were like, "Haha," but then you were like, "I think I agree." Like, this game is like what the modern Final Fantasy game should be. Like, in every sense of the word, it feels like this is what Final Fantasy could be if it wasn't like bloated AAA nonsense and was like a really, really well-directed game with like an awesome vision.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should still give modern Final Fantasy a little bit more credit than that, but
No,
it did take a different
no.
it
I'm just kidding. Just people are gonna be mad. I'm just ruffling feathers. I don't mean
Dang,
that. I'm a jerk.
dang, dang.
But like, but it does. Don't you agree though? Like you play this and you're like, man, this is kind of what Final Fantasy could
Well,
be.
well, this is an alternate universe where either Sakaguchi kept making Final Fantasy after Final Fantasy 9 and things kind of kept more along that path. But actually there is a lot of Final Fantasy 10 specifically in this game, and I think the break is mostly at when Square decided to trip over themselves for an entire console generation trying to push Final Fantasy 13 and Lightning as the greatest character of all time, and everyone was like, it's it's fine, I guess." And
Lightning,
release
like
one
Cloud.
game in a trilogy of one game over the course of when they previously had made, like, 4 mainline Final Fantasy games. So, it was not a great time, and if that never happened, I think Final Fantasy would be different today. But maybe we get to
Oh,
have our cake and eat it too, because here's
I
this
like
game.
I like Sophie. Before we go any further, we should probably say whoever you are, the majority of this conversation, especially in like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, is going to be like really, really deep spoilers because we're gonna get way into it. If you are interested in this game at all, if you like turn-based games, or even if you just want to check it out and you haven't, you should click stop right now, because there are some pretty early spoilers, and like really everything about this game is something you should see. You should go in blind to see.
Yeah, and it's not that it's always pulling like crazy twists and turns at every corner. It's just that the presentation and the way that it gives you everything is so specific that I don't want to taint it at all. My recommendation is that whoever you are, you play this game. This is probably one of the best games ever made. And it's now the only reason why I wouldn't immediately call it game of the decade is because Elden Ring came out a few years ago. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's
that's
great. I
that's
mean,
literally the only reason why.
yeah, I'm gonna say too, like, if we're just kind of going from the beginning to the end here a little bit, I'll say like what is about to happen in a little bit was probably the first, like, you start playing and you're like the presentation's beautiful and the little tiny bit of turn-based combat you get is cool and you're like, I think I'm into this. But what is about to happen, which is so emotionally like heart-wrenching that they do so early, is so effective that I was like literally like crying. Like it was like I've been playing this game for 15 minutes and I'm literally crying already.
Yeah, and it's weird because I think it's a thing that a lot of games attempt to pull off and don't really succeed in doing so because like you introduce a character, you're like, cool, I don't know who this is. Oh, oh no, a sad thing happened. Okay, I don't care because I don't know who they are. But they immediately make all of these characters very emotionally resonant in general. They have very real human conversations about a thing that is sort of looming but not really stated, and everybody is reacting in a very real fashion, in which everyone is, it's either in the aftermath or during a terrible tragedy, people act specific ways, and every character, even all the side characters, all act in believable ways. Yada 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 yada. It's
Yeah.
yeah, we'll get more into it because it'll be much easier to talk about when the spoiler cuffs are off entirely.
You know what's you know what's like so remarkable though that I heard someone point out about this game and is so true is like they literally throw you into the middle of like what is like a 50-year story, and like all the characters are reacting because they have the full context of what's going on. But like they don't do the thing that like maybe Persona would do where they'd be like, "Oh, so what you're saying is the paintress da 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 da." Like
Yeah,
they don't
yeah, yeah,
the
exactly.
characters don't pander to you, and because you're just kind of thrown into the middle of this world and you get to sort of experience it firsthand, it just feels way more real and like intriguing and emotional because you're like, man, clearly these characters have been living with this heavy weight for decades, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting to just kind of get a very honest look of like you look around, you go, "Oh, wait, what's going on here?" Because everyone is just acting the way that they would given the situation that is happening, you know? Um,
Yeah, to the point where, like, I think I told you pretty early on. So, the basic setup that you're gonna learn shortly, or that is like sort of happening right now, is there's this lady called the Paintress, and all of these people here living in what basically used to be Paris, I believe. Um, Effectively, like right now, there's a big 33, or no, sorry, a 34 on this tower way off in the distance, and this character or monster known as the Paintress every year on the same day called the Gommage comes down and changes the number down one number, and everybody that age, which will be 33 shortly, sort of Thanos snaps out of existence and dies. And so, since I think 99 is the first one or something, they've been sort of living with this crazy premise. But what's nuts is like I knew that because I had heard a podcast or I saw like a YouTube video or like a trailer or something, but like the game, I don't think ever explicitly tells you that. And I was like, that's crazy that the game doesn't explicitly tell you that. I only knew it from learning about the game.
yeah, the marketing kinda, has been a little bit forward about it too, so I think there's some amount of expectation built in there that it's it's 2025 and people are going to talk about it, and why not just kind of vaguely set up the premise. So, whether or not you actually know that, this whole opening sequence here, just kind of playing out, I've compared it to, and I'm sure I'm not the only person who's compared it to, the Chrono Trigger fair of an opening where you just kind of get control of a character and you just walk around and talk to people. And you can just kind of do that for a lot. Like there's so many people to talk to and so much stuff that you can just do that you don't have to at all to progress the story. But they just give you the setup if you want it. And so, you can go and have all these optional conversations, and just chat with all these people. And again, just like Andy said, the stated nothing's really been stated. It's just very clear that something not great is about to happen. That's the air that is like very clear, and it's kind of tense, and there's a couple tense conversations as well, and there's a lot of interesting reactions and preparation to how all this plays out. Like we haven't quite gotten there yet, but I might not be fully paying attention to the video when we do. There is a group of children over there at some point that you run into, that you find out that group of kids there, they're all about to be orphans at the end of the day. Not yet,
Yeah,
but they're literally talking about what they're going to do with all of them because they're about to not have parents anymore. Um,
crazy. So
so
heavy.
yeah,
It's wild.
it's a very like, what would you do if this was how the world worked, is very immediately believable and fleshed out. Like everyone had like their whole society is like built around this because it changes everything. It changes the idea of whether or not people want to have kids at all, like for the exact reason that I just described. So a whole bunch of these conversations are all kind of just people's various takes on what is happening, how they're kind of dealing with the fact that this happens every year, and what they think people should be doing just because this is the way the world is. Um it's
Yeah,
yeah, it's real. It's immediately into the ennui. Like immediately into the very French ennui. Um
yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt.
so it's yeah, and it's while it's I'd say it's laid on thick, but it's really not, because like the reality of the situation is insane. It's crazy. Like the
Yeah, it's
oldest
and it
people in the world, for in their world, I should say, are about to be 32 at the end of the day. The oldest.
yeah,
That would
yeah,
be
I would
that would
say
be me.
to me, it's I don't think it really is laid on thick because again, like they could have beat you over the head with like some like dumb like again that whole orphan thing. Like they could have really beat you over the head with that in a way that was like obnoxious and not subtle at all, but like because you're just seeing characters that are like acting the way you would if that was reality, it sort of lets it sink in a very natural way.
Yeah, like they could have had the kids just be like, "What do you mean, mommy and daddy aren't going to be like?" Just immediately like really lay it on thick with like cartoonish reactions type of thing. But like the
Yeah,
crazy
and it's
part is like
crazy.
even the kids like understands the idea of what happens, kinda, because it's so
Yeah,
pervasive.
and even like a lot of characters too like are sort of numb to the reality that it happens. Like they're so like complacent and sort of okay with the fact that that is their reality, that also sells it as well too. Like, and I'm sure there would be people like that in real life. Like not everyone is like, "Oh no, this tragedy called the Gomage." Like there are some people who sort of just shrug and are like, "That's just reality, man."
Them's the
Like, and
breaks.
it's
Yeah.
yeah. Um so yeah, so all right, I want to ask you as we move forward into story stuff. The other big piece about this game that really makes it so remarkable is the combat. What was like the thing in the combat that really hooked you? Like what was your first moment? And then maybe we could talk more about like what the combat actually is.
Oh, well, I heard that it was action-based combat that basically had like Mario RPG. You have to counter hits or do things to get more damage out of your attacks. And I went, "Oh, oh, I love that. I always love that." And then I heard that the parry system is vital. And I was like,
But, like,
"Okay, all right,
in the
cool."
in the game, what was the thing that you were like, "Oh, I love this. This clicks with me now."
The moment I realized how ridiculous the Pictos and Lumina system actually are, I was like, "Oh, oh, 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 I see." Like, all like, the Matrix came together for me, like, all in one moment, and I saw before I had hit the critical point of going, "This is the moment that made me for sure realize that it is my favorite turn-based combat system," finally dethroning the original Bravely Default. Um I'm like, "Oh, well, no, this is gonna hit that." Like, I haven't had the moment yet, but it's going to. I literally just, like, I saw it. I saw it happening. So so that was it. The moment that, like, the idea of the Lumina converter basically was explained, I guess,
Interesting.
which rules. It's so good. What was it for you
Yeah.
then? Because now I'm curious.
I think it's kinda weird. So, like, when I started playing this game, I'm someone who really loves turn-based games in general, but I have to be in the mood. And when this game came out, I was really not in the mood to play a turn-based RPG even a little bit, but I really fell on the faith of everyone I heard saying that this game is absolutely amazing, that I was like, "Alright, I'm gonna start it, and I'm gonna power through," and I really loved the world and everything, but, like, I was enjoying the combat. I was getting into it. I really like that before you set off on the expedition, you can fight Mael as many times as you want, and that really helped me get a hang of like how the combat works. I really appreciated that. But there was some point, probably maybe like about a third of the way through the game or about halfway through the game, when suddenly I just realized that like my brain can totally whatever they do to convey the parry timings and how the attacks work. It has something to do with like audio cues and like the way the camera zooms in or something. But there was like a literal click moment where I was like, "Oh, every attack is like I can wrap my brain around it and learn how it works." And that's when I was like, I am so locked into this whole thing.
Oh, yeah, here's I guess I had faith that the game was gonna do that just based on all the influences that, it very clearly takes from. It is so funny to see, like, I believe the 3 games, that the director likes the most are Devil May Cry games, From Software games, and Final Fantasy VIII specifically, and you can see that in the game because there's just entire, like, almost like mechanic sets where he's like, "What if I just took this from this other game that I like and I put it in here?" And you go, "That works?" He's like, "Yeah, I made it work. It works great, in fact. In fact, it's gonna feel so good, you're gonna wonder why people haven't done it before because it's gonna make too much sense." Um,
Yeah, see this is like and I think the thing overall too that really clicked with me personally is like similar to like okay, we talked a little bit about this when we played Sea of Stars. Like in Sea of Stars, you have to learn like the dodge and parry timings and all that stuff. But it what it does in that game is it mitigates damage, whereas like when you play a game like Superstar Saga or any of the Mario and Luigi games, you can completely take no damage by learning the timings. And so in
yeah.
that way, yeah, it's much more like an action game because the expectation is that you will learn how to engage with the combat on that level, and that when I really got into that, I was like, "Yes, that's so my thing," you know?
Yeah, so if you remember relatively early on, because you played before I did,
Mhm.
and you completed the game, before I started? I don't remember, it was pretty close. But anyways, I remember early on texting you just being like, "Hey, so I just had the moment of, okay, I understand this game and I know what it wants from me and I want to meet it on its level." And I turned the difficulty from normal to whatever the hard one is, which makes the parry timings and everything a little bit tighter. Um, I don't know by how much actually. I never looked up what that was. They did also just release a patch that makes easier difficulties more easier. Or
Oh, that's nice,
yeah,
actually.
so, like, for the story mode players, which I think is the actual lowest difficulty one, I think they made that so the timing windows are, like, way wider now for people who, like, really struggled with the dodge and parry timing still. Um, so yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
So this is now available to more people. So I guess on that front, I think the part that is cool where people make the Dark Souls comparison, and there's definite major Souls influence here, in some strange ways, and in some really awesome ways. Um but in terms of like, hey, the combat sometimes could actually be pretty tough if you just approach it from like an action input point of view. There's also an RPG on this where you can attack things, from a numerical standpoint. So it's a really, really, really wildly interesting combat system that you can play a whole bunch of different ways, and all of them are valid, and so many of them are busted. It's so cool. I love it
Yeah,
so
it's
much. It's so
yeah,
good.
it's got that great blend of tactical balance too, and I don't know how much we'll get into it, but there's, like, this whole system of Pictos and Luminas where, like, effectively the Pictos, I guess they're comparable to something like badges in Paper Mario where, like, they give you specific abilities. Um, but like once you've worn a Picto for a certain number of encounters, you can permanently equip that Picto's ability to any character, but you have a certain number of points that you can allocate. So there's like a ton of min-maxing and strategy you can do in general. And some of them, like for me, I pretty much put all my Pictos into the parrying because I hit a certain point where I was like, I'm not gonna touch the dodge button anymore. I'm gonna parry everything. Because that punishes enemies way more hard. And if I'm gonna engage with the action part of the system, I'm gonna do it. And so for me, like most of my Pictos were like parries give you an extra MP point, which they're not called MP points, but they are action point. They give you an extra action point when you pull off a parry, or parries do like 3 times as much damage when you pull them off. Stuff like that. So you could really lean into that side, or you can lean into like the tactical side of like status effects, and you can also stack like that's the thing they do smartly too very early is it's like, well, Lune can burn enemies, and you can equip Pictos that are like, well, your basic attack does 2 times as much damage to burned enemies, things like that, that let you synergize and strategize in a smart way.
Yeah, it's layers and layers and layers and layers of, conditionals, basically, and because there are so many different ones, you're like, "Wait, I can just put all of those on?" And they're like, "Yeah, you can just put all of those on." And, they balance it by the way that, your so there's a point system with the Luminas where it basically caps how many of those abilities that you can stack because they all have a cost associated with them effectively. And it's so Andy, I'm gonna start to I want to be clear. I think this game is beautiful and wildly original actually. But I am gonna start calling out the specific things where I'm like, this is just this system from this game. And I'm gonna do that a lot. And this is not a criticism at all. I like when people take good things that work because this is the equipment system from Final Fantasy IX. It's exactly how it worked. There they called it AP instead of the Luminas. AP is the in battle thing in this game, but every character also had unique equipment, so it was a little bit more specific. Whereas the Pictos are everyone could equip everything type of thing,
Yeah.
and it's a lot more freeform. So it's a more freeform version of what Final Fantasy IX's equipment system was. And I think that is one of the best parts of the entire game. And also, it has an in universe pretense because it's an invention by one of our main characters that allows them to do that,
You
which is
do like
cool.
in-universe pretenses.
I do. I like really well written ones and believable ones.
Yeah.
Not ones where they have to wink at the camera and go, ha ha, ha," you know?
Yeah, it's cool. I think inevitably when I do New Game Plus this game eventually, I'll have to get way more into the Picto system because I don't wanna say I, like, neglected it, but I get a little bit averse to spending time in menus, and so, like, I would go in and I would equip Pictos, but like I said, at a certain point, I would focus them all on parries, and there were some more tactical ones I wanted to do that like stacked burn or did additional damage to burn, whatever. But like ultimately for me, I wanted to learn the parry timings and I wanted to do the most damage for like getting the correct parry timings, and that's how I wanted to play the game. Which is like it's also so cool that again, like however you want to play this game is awesome and they give you so many tools to customize it how you want it to be. But in a new game plus run, I am gonna probably lean into the min max side of things more. It's just tough because I don't know. I get really frustrated spending time in menus when I could be punching dudes. That's like a me thing more than anything, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, it is interesting that you feel that way in this literal turn-based RPG. You know what I mean? Because in
Yeah, but
almost like any other circumstance in that type of game, it'd be like, well, I mean, the whole game is menus, kinda, so it's
yeah, I
fine.
and maybe this is a me thing, but like I'm this way in any turn-based RPG. Like, you get to the new town, oh, we got to buy the new equipment, equip it to all my characters and blah blah blah. And like whenever I do that, I can just feel my emotions are on the clock. I'm like, all right, the game has 3 minutes and 47 seconds until I get intensely bored with equipping things and just move on, even if I'm not at the maximal setup. Like I just can't I don't know, I can't stomach like just equipping things in a smart way forever. I find it boring. I want to get back into the fighting.
Yeah, I've never gone full on min max with anything, but I've had like a kind of weird relationship with how much effort am I going to put into like optimizing my build or whatever for everything. For the most part, the way that I do it now is I prefer games that have really robust systems like this one that kind of allow you to do sort of whatever you want. And you can just take whatever that thing is that you think is fun, and if you lean into that, it will be effective enough to get you to the end of the game, and through a good bulk of the side content. If not all of it in some capacity. But yeah, it's just good. I'm sure you and I, combat wise, ended up, aside from leaning heavily on the parries because they both feel good and are effective and are very, 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 very good. Um, I'm sure you and I played the game wildly differently. Like wildly differently. Despite the fact that I think we use the same party. So
Who was your like party of choice by the end of the game?
ooh, is this where are we putting the spoiler moratorium on things? Because even talking party members, I don't even wanna bring that part up yet. You know what I mean?
Um
Hmm. Hmm. We gotta
how
figure this out in real time, real time.
who how long into the recording are we? Half hour?
We are a little over a half hour. We are still wandering around, before the harbor.
Is there anything else? I feel like there just isn't that much to say that isn't spoiler stuff at this point. The combat's great. It's tactical. It's like an action-based combat. This game has a great story that really opens up and expands in an intriguing way. Um I don't know, is there anything else really we can touch on that isn't spoilery?
Yeah, I don't really know. I still think we should gate the spoilers um by like the acts basically of the game. In terms of what we do and don't talk about still.
All right, so let's talk about the end of Act 1.
Yeah.
Uh
So let's not go directly to the end, but I guess let's spoiler moratorium is now off for stuff at least that we're engaging with in Act 1. So I think let's just
so
progress to the game because I think that's an interesting way of talking about um what this game is too, you know?
so in Act 1, you get on a boat. Sophie gets gouged, which is a real bummer.
Yes.
And then you
And
have
so does
sort of a
everyone else.
final. Yeah, and so does everyone else. And you have sort of this final send off where Gustav is sort of positioning himself as like the hopeful hero that like everyone else is sort of I think a bit less optimistic than Gustav, and he's a little bit like, look, I'm probably going to die out there, like, what else can I do except go on this expedition and try and help? And as soon get over to like the mainland, you get on the boat. It's like a literal scene, like a D-Day scene of people just getting murdered and getting decapitated so fast and so brutally in a way that this game like totally shook me. Did it shake you too?
Oh, yeah, it is so, like so in the way that, we're sad about Sophie because 'cause we're running around this opening section and we're having, like, really heartfelt conversations with, Gustav where, they were former lovers, and the reason that they split is because, they disagreed on the idea of having kids, and so they just didn't move forward, but they always really cared about each other. So, the whole opening is very emotional, and we lose her, and we see a bunch of these other characters, on the expedition, in here, and then the welcome party is very threadbare because there's just not a lot of people left in general. And then we go and we see almost every single one of those people just unceremoniously get brutally murdered. Like, there's no fanfare. It's like that guy that you just talked to a little bit, he goes like, "No, you gotta get out of here," and then he's just gone, and that's just it. It's
Yeah,
it yeah, it is very just like, "Nope, that's how it would be."
yeah, it's shocking and brutal, and they do a great job of setting up, Renoir. We learn his name later, but Renoir, who they call the white-haired man for like the first half of the game, because he's like a guy, and they're like, "Oh my God, you're old. Like
Yeah,
you're
how are you
not."
old? That doesn't make sense, you should be dead.
Yeah, and then he murders everyone, which sets him up so well and so quickly to be like a horrifying villain in a very great Sephiroth sort of way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and he basically shows up, demonstrates how powerful he is, and then to anyone who he didn't already kill by the time he's basically like, "Well, I'm done here," he's just like, "Hey, go home. Get out of here. If you're still
Yeah.
here, leave."
Yeah, I think the moment this game hooked me personally. So then the first party member you find is Lune, and there's like a little bit more tutorial about how her combat works with the painting elements and stuff. But pretty shortly after that sort of main section where Gustav wakes up and you fight some enemies and you explore on the overworld, the first time you make camp with Lune, there's this like heart-wrenching scene where basically she's like, I think I might know where Mael is. And Gustav is basically like, well, yeah, forget the mission then. Like we have to go find Mael. And like he has what is basically like an emotional psychotic breakdown where he's like I didn't sign up for this. This is so much worse. This is so much more hopeless than I thought. Like in a really like brutal way. And like I don't know, that was the moment when I was like this game is so real because like the game starts, they position Gustav as again, he's like the optimistic hero who's like I'm going to do my best to save the world even if it's hopeless. And then as soon as he sets out into the world, everyone gets brutally murdered and he's like forget this. This is totally hopeless in like a way that I would like that's what any of us would do. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh,
I
yeah,
was
he he
so blown
he
away by that.
literally is like he's like, "I'm out. Like, I'm done." Like,
Yeah,
he's straight up, like, ready to be like, "I'm gonna lay down here, and if something eats me, whatever." Like,
yeah.
that's fully where he's at. It's just like, I don't it's just like, "Alright, yep, the expedition was always a bad idea. Shoulda never done this. Everyone else who did it, no wonder nobody came back. Okay,
Yeah, and like I
bye."
I don't know. Like I think every moment of this game is filled with writing like that. Like to the point where my wife gets frustrated with me all the time because I've told you this before, but if I watch any movie or TV show that is like dramatic at all with like a serious story, I get really mad and I say out loud, I go like, "People don't talk like that."
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I hate, like this is just a me thing, I think, but I get so frustrated at TV shows that write characters in a way that like people don't really talk. And every scene of this game is filled with like a ways that people really actually talk and really well voice acted and really convincingly performed.
Yeah, you know, we could have talked about the fact that there's a really stellar voice cast. That's technically not really a spoiler. There's some really, really fantastic performances from both well-known voice actors like Jen English and Ben Starr and even Charlie Cox, the Daredevil guy. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's unbelievable. The acting is so fantastic. It really sells a lot of who and what these characters are and their struggles. I think all of the actors probably feel some kind of connection to those characters because there are some there's a couple moments in this game that are like far and away some of my favorite voice acting moments I've ever heard at all. Um it's really good. It's very good. So, all those
Yeah.
people deserve credit. This video is just on mute right now. Uh, yeah, I played the game in English. I know there's a lot of people who would also play the game because it is also fully in French, which, you know, that makes sense. But, um
Yeah.
but yeah, just the English voice cast is also just absolutely stellar, on every
Yeah.
front.
So Act 1, I think, in general, is like it's sort of like the prototypical JRPG. You go to, like, some really far-flung, cool locations, like the great underwater location that's not really underwater is such, like, a cool visual highlight, and, like, the overworld has this beautiful painted style, and there's, like, a couple locations you can sorta check out, and you are sort of funneled through, like, some great bosses, and then we make our way to the end of Act 1. Should we talk about the end of Act 1?
Yeah, well, we gotta talk about Eskie first. You definitely find.
SKA is not till Act 2, bro.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not sure, I could be wrong. No, you're right.
I don't.
Oh, man, how could I forget he was I didn't realize he was all the way back in Act 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Oh,
know,
so we
right?
find SKA, who's, like, basically like a big dumb French doll
He's
that's
he's
like,
he's big dumb jerk. He's like, I know
"I could fly."
I know you guys need me to swim you places, but I can't swim you there till I have my rock." And you're like, "What do you mean till you have your rock?" And then I'm like, here's the thing. Anyone who's listening to this who's played the game before is like, I can't believe he's talking smack about SKA. SKA is a wonderful, beautiful, incredible, amazing creature. I just think it's so very funny that he's just like, "Nope, can't do it.
Yeah,
Won't do it
he
till
is
you bring me the rock."
he is set up to be, like, a little bit hateable until later. Like, they
It's
want you to be frustrated with SKA.
it's so funny because he's just like, "No, you child." He's like, "Oh, I gotta get my Rocky." You're like, "What do you mean?"
And then you go fight Francois, who's equally as hilarious.
Yeah, and he yells at, he goes, "I'm not a rock. I'm eternal. You can clearly see that I have legs." And you look at him and you can't see any legs.
Yeah, you know what else too is we almost skipped over the Gestural Village, which is, like, another great highlight of, like, oh man, the cool, wacky JRPG village that's, like, filled with humor and, like, insane characters.
Yeah, little wooden creatures with little paintbrush heads, and their leader is incredibly super mega strong and like is a super boss that you will not be able to fight until like almost the end of the game type of thing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
so good. They're so funny and they speak in little like partially imaginary, partially real, like French, like their little voice clips, like when they talk, because they're not all fully voice acted. But when their text appears on screen, they just say like little French sounding whatever.
Yeah,
That
yep.
is partially a little made up language and partially probably a couple of the real French words. It's adorable. They're very endearing. They're all very silly and dumb, and they love fighting. They love
They're
fighting
like the
so
French
much.
they're like the French minions, basically.
Yeah, but they're good,
Yeah,
you know?
what are you trying to talk smack about the minions right now on our
Absolutely. Here's the
podcast?
thing. I got you. I'm gonna Andy, I have news for you. You on the internet talking positively about the minions, you're the one in the minority.
My wife loves the minions.
That's okay. I'm just letting you
I
know.
don't
On the internet. I'm just
I've
letting you
never
know.
hated whatever. Alright, so you get SKA and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna go over here." I don't remember why they're going over here, but they're going over here. They're trying to find the painters, basically, and then you fight a big creepy hand boy who you fight him and you're like, "Oh, man, this game is definitely inspired by Dark Souls in a big way, for sure."
Oh
Big
yeah,
creepy hand boy.
yeah, you see a couple enemy designs, you go, "Oh no. Oh yeah, they like Dark
Oh, yeah.
Souls."
Yeah, so he's tough. He has 2 phases, and then everyone jumps onto SKA's back, and then Renoir shows up.
Yeah.
And then you're the pointed out that up until this game, like Gustav, who's the main character, his thing he's been saying is for those who come after, and you're like, oh no. And when War shows up and you do the Sephiroth thing where you fight him and they show you with mechanics that you can't even hurt him, you can't do any damage to him, then you're like, oh, things aren't looking great for old Gustav boy.
Yeah, yeah, you have your unwinnable fight, and there's a kind of brutal once again, it's not quite as unceremonious as the beach, when everybody lands, but it is very, Renoir's like, "Alright, and you gotta go, so see ya," and that's pretty much it, and he kills Gustav, um, and it's not a happy moment for anybody. Once again, everybody has very, very real, honest, like shocked reactions and questions about, well, how do we go on? Because again, there was also the part of it where again, in just in universe, well, Gustav's the one with his fancy arm and this Lumina converter thing that has given them the ability to be stronger than every other expedition before them, to allow them to fight things, and yet still this old guy shows up and they can't even touch him. So what are they supposed to do? So it's a very, very big all hope is lost moment. And then also at the same time, some other guy shows up named Verso, who's a little cryptic about who and what he is at first, but he's like, "Hey, I you and I have the same goals. I'm asking you to trust me. We need to get you out of here before he kills the rest of you guys," type of thing.
And for some reason they spare Mael, and for some reason everyone seems to know who Mael is, or they seem to recognize her, which is like the huge that's sort of like the huge tip off that like something weird is going on that's deeper, at least with Mael.
Yeah, so there is this weird, very completely unexplained type of thing where and she's also having a couple weird dreams about this white-haired man, Renoir, and this girl with like a painted mask face who we see a bunch, who says a whole bunch of very cryptic things that don't make a ton of sense in the dream.
Who looks
And
like Mael, by the way. At this point, I was like, she looks just like Mael.
yeah, you can tell that they're, like, very similar in, like, build and stuff, and the faces are only quite different because, it's covered in, like, a mask and paint, and it's also, like, partially, like, fractured, like, if you just, like, took a chunk out, which is
Yeah, almost
weird.
like Phantom of the Opera style.
Yeah, yeah, very, very much that. I'm sure that's somewhat deliberate as well.
So, yeah, so I'm curious to hear what you think about Verso's introduction. I think mechanically I liked when Verso was introduced because his whole gimmick being based around like what is literally called perfection, which is like the style points, that came at the exact moment that I was like, "Oh, I'm going to parry and perfect this entire game." So, I was a little skeptical of his character, but from a mechanic standpoint, I was like they nailed the timing on introducing this.
Oh, yeah, it's so funny 'cause it plays out exactly like, "Oh, that's not just a style meter, it's like, that's the Devil May Cry style meter, and you get bonuses and more stuff from having the style meter higher." It's like, just
Yeah.
straight up. Oh, also, this is the piece that I realized I don't think I told you. I think I mentioned the favorite games list to you before. I don't know if I told you. I don't it might be the director, Guillaume, or it might be another one of the major, developers who's been a little bit more public facing. His YouTube channel, if you go, is just a bunch of triple S ranking Devil May Cry 5, like, which requires no damage. Yeah, it's like, "Oh, oh, that's who
Yeah,
we're
that
dealing
makes a lot
with."
of
Like, the guy
makes a lot
who's,
of
like, the freak is, like, that's one of the developers. So, like, you can see, like, where these people drew their inspiration from. It is very naked, in a good way. It
yeah.
doesn't even read as like unoriginal or like a rip off in a way that it could. It's like, no, this is a thematically appropriate use of this thing, and it's fun to do above all
Yeah.
else, you know? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'll say
it's
it's
really
in
good.
I'll say it's interesting that they make Verso the main character, at least to me, because I wanna say around this time, I was like, "I'm gonna start playing with Mayel as my main sprite," because in my heart, she is the main character, which I guess was me sorta reading further into the game in a way I wasn't realizing. But, there is part of me that's like, "Man, they could have maybe just made Mayel the main character, but, maybe that would have spoiled what's gonna happen later." I don't know.
Yeah,
How do
I
you
don't know.
feel about it?
I find the it's really only a minor perspective jump because like all these characters are pretty much always all together anyway. So it's not like there's a true, oh, we looked at this purely through the eyes of this character type of thing. We do kind of, in theory, like I mean, this was this intro sequence where we're forced to be Gustav, but yeah, like you
But
mentioned,
here's the
at pretty
thing,
much
though.
any other point, you can swap that's a mechanic thing. You can just swap whatever character is your lead
But
character on the overworld. So
Verso is the one who has relationship mechanics with all the other characters. So in that sense, he is way more of a main character mechanically.
yes, that I agree with. I think the perspective shift is an interesting thing. Um, we'll talk more about that later once we like really
I
get
guess
into the meat of that piece. I think.
yeah, I guess the thing that maybe irked me is it was like Gustav's a great lead, and then he dies, and they're like, "Cool, let's get another like strong white male lead in here." Where I was like, couldn't we have had Mael? Like maybe that's my irk is like we had to swap Gustav with a character who like his perspective is not similar, but like just in terms of like him being like a confident white male lead with great hair, it's like we could have had Mael be the one and that would have been okay. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but that was sort of the irk I had at this point in the game.
I think I think if this were any other game, I would understand that maybe thought, but in terms
It's
of
it's pretty minor. I'm like griping
yeah,
for the sake of griping. It's not really a huge
yeah, I was
deal.
gonna say in terms of everything that comes later, and what we get out of all those relationship mechanic things, etc., it's all very good and not at all that thing that you said it was. Even though I think on its face, at this point in the story, like I can see, like, wait, what the heck? Why? We already have this other character
Yeah.
over here. Who is this guy? Which I think is
Yeah, it
also
just
intentional, honestly. I
yeah.
think a
It
huge amount of that is, "Wait, what? Wait, why should I trust this guy?" Because even the characters in the game are like, "Why should I trust you? I don't know who you are. You just showed up."
yeah, I did like getting to know I liked the relationship mechanics because I don't know, I feel like in so many other games you do them because you're like, "Well, I wanna do them so I can deepen the relationship, so I can improve this stat mechanic or whatever." But, like, for me, when it was like, have Verso talk to Lune, like, of course I want Verso to talk to Lune. They're both fascinating and smart and well written, and I wanted to see every scene. I didn't think about what benefit I was getting out of them. I thought they were all just great scenes.
Oh yeah, I super agree. Yeah, it's not like there are things that you end up getting out of doing the relationship things, but for the most part, it's literally go over and talk to the person, and they're always at the camp, and it's not like there are very few, if any, like conditions to it. It's literally just hey, just go talk to the characters. That's it.
Yeah.
It's not
Yep.
asking a ton of you to do stuff. The only thing later on is, we get some cool side quests, for each character that you'd have to go on to, in theory, complete that. And that's all much like everything else, a bunch of optional content, that is all extremely good.
Yeah,
Extremely good.
that's the chrono trigger of it all,
Yeah.
basically, those
I
quests.
love it. I think that's probably where maybe some other people might start I don't wanna say take issue, but I think take more issue with, uh the balance of everything, and we can talk about that more later because I think that discussion will be very interesting once we get there. But we're
So
still
Verso
yeah.
yeah, so Verso is basically like, "Alright, I think I know the best way to to get to the Paintress because I've been here a lot longer than you guys, and I'm from this much earlier expedition, but we failed, and he kind of alludes to the fact that people have died along the way or whatever. There's a lot of mystery around it, but you eventually meet Minoko, who's like one of Gustav's oldest friends, which is a great addition to the party. Um,
Versus all his friends.
did I say
Yeah,
Gustav's?
you said Gustav because he's on the screen.
My mistake. And
Yeah.
Minoko's great. He's kind of like the Beastmaster from Octopath Traveler. Like he's the guy who lets you capture the monsters and use their abilities, which is awesome.
He's a blue
Um,
mage.
yeah, what he said.
Yeah.
What's
Well,
that?
that's what the Final Fantasy version would be. The enemy
Oh,
skill character. Yeah.
nice. So he's great, and I mean, I don't want to say like this is all just kind of like going on adventure stuff. Maybe I just don't remember it that well. But like this is basically the big lead up to like we're actually gonna get to the Paintress. Oh, you fight all the Nevrons on the way, which are sort of like the big super bosses of the world type of thing.
So the Nevrons are the regular monsters. You're thinking of the Axons.
Yes, I am
But
thinking of
yeah,
the Axon.
but before we even get there, the first time we see an Axon, it's already dead because the first thing that Verso tells everybody to do, he goes, "Hey, you can't get through there's a big barrier in front of the Paintress and the monolith over there. You can't get through it. You just can't do it. So the only thing that we can do to take down the barrier is to destroy the heart of the Paintress, which lives in this manor that the white-haired man um is like basically resides in. So he's basically like, and I know where the manor is. It's in Old Lumiere, and they're like, Old Lumiere. So, well, we do end up finding out, and I don't remember exactly at what point we learn all of it. Um, is so part of Lumiere, which is the town the city that everybody was from, was originally in the middle of the continent, right there. What we find out later is that the Paintress, during whenever they talk about the fracture is some form of battle resulting in the Paintress grabbing part of Lumiere and throwing it away from the rest of the continent. So so that's what happened. I
Nice.
don't know if you ever knew that, but yeah. So
I
there's
think I remember. Yeah.
yeah, okay. So there's that. I know it's unclear for some time. I do not know exactly when it's revealed, but it's another bit of like, world building lore as to like why are things the way they are type of thing. Um
Yeah, and you find out that Renoir is Verso's dad, so that's a
yeah.
bummer.
Yeah, and then they're like, "Yo, why wouldn't you tell us that?" And he's like, "Family's complicated." And then moves on.
He's like, "Have you met the guy?"
Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, there's also that. It's just like family's complicated and yeah,
Yeah. And I don't I don't know I don't actually know when they tell you that the paintress is his mother. Did I just put that like, do you find that out way later and I just happened to put it together?
You get confirmation on that later. It does seem kind of alluded to, like that's the other part of this is that so it's Renoir and then also the girl that was in Mael's dream are like at the manor and then you fight Renoir again and it's technically actually a fight, but it's one of those you win and he's like, "Hey, guess what? I'm better than you," and then just like bodies everybody and then takes
Yep.
off with the heart of the paintress and is like, "Well, I'm just gonna put this in place that you guys can't get to it, and that is no longer an option."
And
Um,
kills Winoko's son if you didn't need a bigger reason to hate the
yeah, he
guy.
kills Noko. Actually, you have it backwards. Noko is Minoko's dad. I don't know if you knew that.
What?
Yeah, no, that's for real.
He
Yeah,
calls him No, he calls him his son.
you got. I'm telling you, you got it backwards. But anyway, Noko
Now I
is
gotta Google stuff on
yeah.
my own
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Noko and Minoko, they're both
But you find that
Gestrels.
out later though. You're right, but you
Yeah.
find that out later. Like he says like, "Oh, because the Gestrals if they die can be reborn." And he's like, "Actually, like he has died before, and that's why he's like a little kid basically."
Yeah, because they just come back as a little one before they grow up. So yeah.
Whatever. Don't
It's just I'm
whatever.
just I
Don't ruin
just
the
that's just I'm just telling you. Just telling you.
um actually
It's not my
uh
fault that you were wrong on the internet. I had to correct you.
So then you go and fight the Axons.
Yeah, because it's basically Verso like is like on the ground, punching the ground like, "Oh god, that was the only way. What do we do? What do we do?" And then
Yep.
after everyone being like, "Well, you could make a weapon to break the barrier if you had enough chroma." And he's like, "You could kill every Nevron on the whole continent and not have enough chroma to do that." Because the only thing that has enough chroma to do that are those axons. But I tried. So we also, I also forgot about this. We also found out that he technically can't die.
Verso. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
he is immortal, and there is a scene where it is very overt because he literally cuts himself in half for a bit, and then they're like,
Damn.
"Doesn't that hurt?" He's like, you know."
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah. So he's like, "Hey, I literally can't die, and I've tried fighting one of these things, and I couldn't beat it. So I don't know what you guys think you're gonna do." And they're like, "No, no, 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 no. We're gonna beat it. We're gonna kill them. We're gonna do it because they have a Lumina converter, which no one
And you
else
go
had
fight,
before." And you go fight them,
which are cool. I
and
like them.
and they're
There's
awesome dungeons. I really like them both.
they're cool. I don't wanna say I feel like maybe this is a bit of a stretch, but, like, to me, they sort of felt like the great beasts from Breath of the Wild a little bit, which I that's not even what they're called. What are they
The
called?
Divine Beasts.
Yeah, they're like the divine beasts a little bit, and maybe because you have some choice in the order you wanna fight them, but that felt like the big energy is you can, like, see these big dungeons, and monsters off in the distance, and you're like, "I'm gonna go fight those guys." And they're
I'm gonna throw out there that this is another Final Fantasy thing. These are the four fiends from Final
sure.
Fantasy 1, except
Yeah, I
one of
knew
them's
that.
already dead.
Yeah, obviously, I knew that.
Yeah. Yeah, you loser, not knowing all the Final
One of
Fantasy
'em's
references.
shut
Big
up.
you
I
big dumb
know.
loser, you don't know nothing
I
about nothing.
I played Final
Played
Fantasy
Final
7, so
Fantasy
now I
7
know
finally.
everything.
Yeah, we'll get to that eventually. We did consider doing that for this episode, but we wanna talk about Clair Obscur because it's so good. And
So
also
then
people are talking about it. Yeah, 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 yeah.
you break the barrier with the sword, and then you run up and you fight the paintress, but you, like, kind of fight the paintress. You fight, like, what is the heart of the paintress, and then they're like, "Oh, it opens up this cool dungeon," which a bunch of with a bunch of scary boys.
But yeah, you fight the big so from all the way from Lumiere, you can see the painter's kind of crouched in front of the monolith with whatever numbers written on it, just kind of hunched over, looking real sad. So you walk up and you start smacking her, and she doesn't take any damage, and we're like, "What the heck?" And then they're like, "Well, this isn't actually the paintress. This is something else." And then you pretty much get sucked inside the monolith, which I'm still not fully clear on exactly how that happens, but you get sucked inside the monoliths.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is where you fight Renoir, and then you fight the heart of the paintress. That's the other thing too that they don't fully explain is that there's like sort of these sort of like cracked like rock sort of looking ghost creatures, and one of them is like the heart of Renoir that's been like hanging out with you. At least you sort of piece together later because you fight what is the heart of the paintress.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um
the curator
which is
guy who's been upgrading your weapons the whole time, as it turns out, is Renoir, which is
yeah.
crazy.
Which is cool. The Renoir fight is really great because like there's a lot of great dialogue in there that is confusing and you're like, I know this dialogue makes sense. Like he says like the heart approaches him and he says to him something like, you know, you won't be able to save your son. You're just going to push your wife away by doing this or something. And that was such a great line because again, it was like that's what the character would say, but you're like, "I don't know what that means yet. What I wanna learn what that means."
If I remember right, and I might have this wrong, I think he also says something like, "I love them too," you know? Which is like,
Yeah,
who is he
yes.
talking about? You're like, "What do you mean?" Um,
Yeah. I also love I can't believe you didn't, like, scream at this moment, but, like, right before you fight Renoir, you know you can't kill him, and Verso's like, "It's alright, we just have to incapacitate him," and Mael is like, "No, we're gonna find a way to kill him," like,
yeah.
in the
Yeah,
most, like,
she's like, "No,
brutal.
no, 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 we're gonna kill him. Don't worry."
And I was like, "Oh my god, I love this character." Like, what a great pop off moment.
Yeah. I pinged Mael as being, a personal favorite almost immediately. I knew I was really gonna like Mael and wherever that character was going, and we'll talk a lot
Yes.
more about that later. Well, not too much
Yeah.
later. I guess we're kind of encroaching on what that's gonna really be. But anyway, the main thing that we find out, like, there's some of that cryptic stuff there, but then we're fighting Renoir, and then finally we get to the point in the fight where the curator, which, as I just said, we probably shouldn't have said that early enough, is like Renoir, technically, right? Shows up and grabs Miles' hand and just puts it on this white-haired man's chest, and they have this little chat real quick, and he disappears into a bunch of golden flower petals, in a similar way to what everyone happens when they get gomashed by the paintress and they all go in red. So it's like, whoa, that was very specific. Why did that happen? And then you just walk up and yeah, you go up and you fight the paintress, and that's where she starts talking about I can't believe you let your father do this type of thing, and it's not fully clear who she's talking to. And then it's clear that she's talking to not just Verso but also Mael eventually. And you're like,
Yeah.
what is happening? What is going on here? Um
Yeah.
and the fight's crazy. She like rips open like a hole in reality to like shoot big chroma energy at you as one of her attacks. It's awesome. It's so cinematic. So this is also, I think, the first time where I'm going to take one little sidebar. We've mostly been talking about the events of the game, but in terms of mechanically, so by this point you've gotten a lot of pictos and a lot of stuff, and you've probably built up a whole bunch of lumina. So you've stacked a whole bunch of stuff on your characters, and your weapons all have passives on them that level up that add into all this stacking nonsense, right? So by this point, you're really strong, most likely. Even if you haven't done like all the side content, you're probably like really strong. But even if you're hitting, so the damage cap, like in classic Final Fantasy games, is 9,999 points on any individual hit. That's as much as you can do. Um, this fight is very clearly balanced with the expectation that you're probably hitting that most of the time.
Yes.
It's really it's such a like, hey, no, like it's a real, it's not like the hardest fight I've ever done, but it's very much a, no, we're gonna squish where you should be at, roughly, like right here right now type of thing, in a way that I think works really well, because I didn't struggle too much with these fights. Like, they're kind of tricky. They do some of the they do some of the craziest, I'm gonna do, like, 3 or 4 feints, but not actually do an attack, like, in the whole game. That's not most
Yeah,
of their attacks, but there's a couple where it's like, "Oh, come on. Are you for
yes.
real?"
Yeah, yes, definitely. It's a big jump in difficulty because they hit hard, but yeah, the biggest one is like they will hit you for some strings or 4 or 5 attacks that you're like, "How would I ever?" You know?
There is one that the paintress does where she goes and she swings and twirls that paintbrush for a full, I counted to 3 before she finally swung. And then she hit me
Yeah,
because I got the timing wrong. I was like, "You gotta be kidding me."
yeah, it's tough. So all right, here's what I'm potentially proposing. I know we weren't sure if we were gonna do a multi-parter. I feel like we should maybe finish up Act 3 and sort of
Act 2.
maybe not get in. Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. We should
Yeah.
finish like Act 2 and 3, or maybe 2. Maybe I'm wrong about this. And cuz I feel like when we get to Act 3 and when we get to the very very end, you and I have a lot of emotions, and there's a lot of like great interpretations about the very end of this game and stuff. And I
There's also
feel
so
like
much side content that kind of feeds into, I think, the depth of that discussion too.
yeah, and I don't wanna, like, squish it. I don't wanna record for, like, 2 hours and then get to the end and be like, "Yeah, and then also this is an interpretation." So maybe we should finish act 2 or 3. How are you feeling? Tell me how you're feeling.
Yeah, so we are 1 hour and 9 minutes into this. I think we should chat for a little bit more about the conclusion of, so this, what we're talking about will be coming up on the end of Act 2, and then the setup for what Act 3 is. I think we should talk about what Act 3 is very broadly, but not what happens in it.
Yeah.
And then leave that for a part 2. Does that does that
I think
sound
that's
good?
perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
think that
exactly
makes
what
sense.
I'm
Like,
thinking.
here's the thing, man, that's why I said to you before, I was like, "Do you think we should do this one as a two-parter?" You're like, "Nah." And now we're an hour in, I'm like, "Dog, we could talk about this game, like, forever." Like, this part might end up being somewhere on the hour and a half part. I bet you the next one we talk for at least 2 hours just because we're not gonna be able to help ourselves. Once, like, the the leash is off, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
So
Yeah, so all right, so let's get into it then. Talk to us about the end of Act 2 and the beginning of Act 3.
yeah, so we're doing this painter's fight, all the crazy things are happening, and then you get to another phase of the fight where, like, after fighting 2 phases, you're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe there's a 3rd phase." But she's just sitting there kind of broken, and the only thing she will do is heal a party member for you. And it's like, why is she doing this? Like, she clearly, like,
Yeah.
doesn't wanna hurt us anymore, but the only thing that you can do is finish off her health bar, which doesn't take much at that point. I was wondering if it was a "I'm not supposed to fight her" type thing, and I skipped some turns for a while, and that is not the case. So, I was like, "Alright, I guess we're doing it." And so you finish her off, and basically, Verso and Mael kind of hold her as Mael once again puts her hand over her chest and does exactly what she had just done to Renoir and poofs her. Like this kind of targeted gamage type thing she's doing. Um, and they're like, wait, we we did it. We actually did it. We succeeded. We beat the paintress. We did the thing that so many people have been trying for so long. And they kind of have this weird, like, kind of tense. It's not like celebratory or like wildly triumphant. It's like complete disbelief as they grab their 33 flag and plant it at the top of the monolith. And partway through the fight, Verso reveals that he actually had the rock that Esquier wanted to fly the whole time, so now you can fly.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was like, "What the heck? What?" That would've been
Yep.
useful before. So they're flying away because 'cause they're like, "Alright, time to fly back to Lumiere and share the good news with everyone," 'cause, um, there was no more I don't no, I guess the number is still on there just because she painted it on there. She never removed it, so it's just still on there. They come back to like, "Yeah, we did it," and there's again, it's it's clear that people are happy and smiling and celebrating, but because everyone is in such disbelief and there's also just so few people, there's almost no fanfare to this. And Mael gets to walk up to Gustav's former apprentices with his journal in hand and has a really, really, really brutally sad, wordless moment where the kids realize that he didn't come back, and
Yeah,
and
that's
and they
tough.
lose
That's a
it.
tough
Oh,
moment.
dude, it's so vicious. Like the gloves are off with all that stuff in this game. It's crazy.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
really don't hold back on that. And then Verso is sitting at the end of the pier, and he opens up a letter from who we find out is the girl with the painted face, and her name is Alicia. And she writes him a letter that isn't really fully descriptive, but it's kind of like, hey, like this family nonsense, you guys really just got to figure your crap out and like talk to each other and just like be willing to accept that like sometimes things suck and things would just be better that way. And he just kind of drops the letter into the ocean because part of it is I hope you give this to Mael and you can
Yeah, it
choose
says,
to
like,
do it or
very
not. Yeah.
explicitly. Yeah.
Um, and he just drops it into the ocean, and right after he does that, another explosion from the monolith happens, and one final gamage wipes out every person who lived in Lumiere again.
Oh, which is so
and
Like, you
everyone is just as surprised as you, and you can see it on their face as they fade away. It is horrifying.
yeah, it's so you can, like, tell something is fishy, like, as soon as you kill the paintress, like, everything feels like there's so little fanfare that, like, you and the characters all are like, "So we did it, so I guess that's the end," and you have this, like, very unsettling feeling, but when that happened, I was like, "Oh my god, what in the world is
Dude,
gonna happen
yeah,
now?"
dude, even like Lune's face, because she's been fighting for survival in her parents' footsteps like her whole life, and she's just in panic going, "No, wait, what? I thought we did it," as she's fading. There's no peace, there's no anything. It's brutal. It's so
Yeah.
brutal.
It's
Um,
crazy, and
yeah.
the do we what happens next is so, like I was like, "What?" This is, like, one of the things I really love about this game too is, like, it's really great, and there are a lot of games that are really great, obviously, but one of my favorite things about any game is when, like
I have a question.
yeah.
I'm now rethinking, and we can move on. Do we wanna save what the next reveal is for the next episode, or do we want to leave the reveal and then talk more about it next time?
Let's save the reveal, let's not say it. We'll leave on
I
a
I've I've
cliffhanger.
I feel like, yeah, so that is not the end of the game, despite
Okay,
the
wait, but
fact
let
that it
me
very much seems like it should be, because literally we do what we think that we set out to do, and everyone dies.
yes. But well, wait, let me finish my thought because
Yeah.
you're right, but let me finish. One of my favorite things about this game and any game is when the game expands and exceeds your expectations and you're like, "Wow, from where I started to where I am, I would have never guessed what was going to happen because the game has it's expanded so beautifully in this big way." Like I think that's what makes it feel like such an adventure and such an emotional like journey because it's just because of the way it opens up and what you learn on the way is so mind-blowing and awesome.
I agree. I think there's not just video games, I think there's very few pieces of media I have ever consumed that feel so completely cohesive within itself. Like, a lot of the games that this draws huge inspiration from, a lot of those games are, like, genuinely, like, famously not finished games. And you can feel those things, right? You can feel the pieces, but, like, fundamentally what they are still good enough. But, like, this is just it doesn't feel like I look at any part of this game and go, "Ah, that's where the money or the time ran out." You know
Right,
what I
yeah.
mean? It's so good, and that the biggest piece of it is in that world building and that scope and everything, just like you're saying. I don't even wanna make the comparisons to the handful of other media, um that it is, just because I feel like it would be too spoilery for either this or any of those things. But yeah, it's good. It's one of my favorite. I knew something was going on here, but there's no way I would have been able to have pieced this together. Not a
Yeah.
chance. You know what the crazy
Yeah.
part is? I can't wait to eventually do New Game Plus and go, wow, that really was just right there the whole time, wasn't it? 'Cause I
Yeah.
bet you that
Yeah.
happens a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, so I guess we'll wrap up by saying this game's beautiful. We both love it. If somehow you listen to the end of this and you still haven't played this game, go play this game.
Yeah,
You're
we've
going to want to
spoiled
talk about it
some
with your
some
friends.
major things here, but, like,
There's
I
still a lot ahead of us.
there's so much more, and the more is really truly, if you somehow sat through this whole thing and the game sounds even vaguely interesting, before we record and upload a part 2, don't listen to that. Please just go play it, and then also join us in gushing about what it will be. I think we'll just have to have the next one, just I mean, it's gonna be part 2 of a game where we've already started talking about spoilers. The next one's gonna be no holds barred. So
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, man, it's just a joy to talk about this game too. I was telling someone at work recently who he's a little bit older than me, has a few kids and stuff, but we recently were like bonding over talking about games, and he's like, "Oh, you have a Steam Deck and blah blah blah." And he was like, "Oh yeah, I started playing this game. It's called like Clair Obscur Expedition." And I was like, "You like just started?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Do you know anything about it?" And he's like, "Not a thing." And I was like, All I'm gonna say is you're gonna have the absolute best time in your whole life. Like, just keep playing." I was like, me and my buddy talk like every day, and for the last like 2 weeks, all we talk about is how much we love this game. So you're gonna enjoy it so much.
You mentioned to me a couple of times that you're like, sometimes I just sit and I just kind of think about Clair Obscur Expedition 33 after completing it. And then I did that, and I don't know if I ever shared with you. I absolutely have just sat and been like, I'm just gonna sit and think about the game and what it says, what I think it wants to say, the presentation of all of it, how good it is, and just how emotional an experience it is. It's oh man.
It's
It's
quite
I
a it's
it's a top 5 all time for sure. Like there's now a couple of these that we've done for the podcast that are top 5 all time for sure. Undertale's up there too. Elden Ring's up there. So the
yeah,
the top
I
5
think
is getting small.
it's one of the best stories I've ever experienced, but it's also similar to Undertale and other games. It's one of those games that is really aided by the fact that it is a game, and it's a story that could only be told as a game. Like, it's not to, I don't want to talk smack about The Last of Us or other games, but like, The Last of Us was like, oh, cool, HBO. And you're like, great, it makes sense on HBO, and that's awesome. But like, this game could only be a game in the effective way that it's told.
Yeah, I think it's like not in the same way that Undertale is, right? Where we talked at length about why Undertale really only works as a game. It is something that truly you could not make a book or something. I think you could adapt Clair Obscur and into like some sort of like filmed adaptation, right? But I think part of what makes a bunch of this so effective is the way that it presents your time with the characters and how you talk to them and the dialogue that happens as you're doing things with the controller in your hand and you have agency. You don't have that with any kind of filmed show, right? You don't have any agency there. And there's just, at least to me, less connection to the characters on
Yeah.
some level, right? And that's part of why I just like video games in general, because that's how I see things, when you can
Yeah.
also do things on a mechanical level in the way that a character plays that ties into their character that is believable and blah blah blah. Those things don't really work as well to me in in a film. Which, you can have, a character whose tropes fit like their abilities and their personality and blah blah blah, but like I have a style meter. You know what I mean? Like
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, and not to say anything of the fact that this game is very clearly inspired by lots of great games and is sort of like in conversation with those games in a really direct way. Like, that's a huge piece of why this game is so great.
Yeah, bro, we didn't even talk about like every character is not just a class. They have like their own unique set of systems and mechanics that is not just their abilities, but it's like their own set of stuff with cooldowns and a rotation that you would do that both work as an individual or as a team or party member. It's oh my god.
They could
Oh, it's
Each
so good. We can
character
talk more
could
about it
have
next
their
time
own
because of
game.
the end game stuff, because of how far it goes. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
All right. So look, we love you. This is Cryptic Puzzle. We're going to talk more about Clair Obscur and eventually Final Fantasy VII, but this game's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, and oh, I guess we if we're gonna be spoilers unchained, I guess I can actually just stream the game next time because I can just run around
Yeah.
the overworlds at the
Yeah.
end. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
All
something
right.
like that.
Well, I guess in that sense, we're signing off. My name's Andy.
My name is Tommy.
This has been Cryptic Puzzle. Have you ever considered video game?
Have you ever considered video game? So long, everyone.